And hi again. We've been talking about some of the hidden features, some of the hidden power in Howler, and how to access it. And today I thought I'd talk about camera stabilization. So let's dive in. I'm going to be loading an AVI. It's an older format. So really, the only codecs that come with Windows, I think, is like run length encoding and some real ancient stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and use the let's see, the DivX codec. I downloaded that and then installed it, and I got some older animations or some older videos lying around somewhere. I'm going to load, which happen to be AVI files, and I'll just use the full range of 239 frames. And there we go, and we can take a look at this. Play that back, and we can see it's a little bit, the camera's moving around quite a bit. So, first going to stabilize that. And I'll go to filters and animated and stabilize. And here we go. So, first option, there's a dry run. We want to test this before we commit to it. Actually, before we even do that, I'm going to go ahead and store a copy of this animation. We can use it later. I might store it to disk. Memory, you could probably, for this short thing, this little thing, we could probably store it to memory, but I'll go ahead and store it to disk. Good idea. Anyways, we can restore that later if we want it. It's like having kind of an undo stage that we can come back to. All right, so let's go to animated, and let's see, stabilize. We've already selected dry run. We're going to do a test run before we get started. Next thing we need to do is select a track point. That's just a point that's a reference point, something that doesn't really change throughout the animation that we can track. I think there's a little spot right about here that would be a good reference point. And I think for this animation, since this doesn't really change any, I'm going to make reference frame 1, and that just means it saves a copy of that little red spot there from the first frame instead of taking it from each frame. That way, because this isn't really changing, and it'll give us a little better tracking point. I'm going to leave the channels on for now. Those are useful for certain things. We can talk about those later. And there's two modes, smooth motion and remove motion. We're just going to remove the camera motion from this. And then there's some border handling options, which we can talk about later. So I'm going to hit go, and you can watch this. And you can see it's doing a pretty good job of tracking the motion there. And it might freeze up. That doesn't mean it's crashed. It just means it's busy. Windows usually only gives you about 2 seconds of if it doesn't get like some messages or something, it might lock the window and you won't see anything happening. It's a feature of Windows. There's not much we can do about it. All right, so that was our dry run, and I'm going to go back here and go ahead and run that. And just like what we did here, hit go, let it run, and you can see it's going and doing it, showing the progress of the number of frames. And it'll take a few moments. And it'll take a few more moments. This happened a lot early when I did this test a lot earlier. I was on the power. I had the power plugged in, and it went a lot faster. So, anyways, we just completed that, and we'll take a look at what that looks like now. As you can see, there are some edge artifacts, but ignoring those for the moment, you can see we have largely removed most of the camera motion out of the scene, and that's we could do that again and maybe get a little bit more out, probably just run it a second time, but for now, for our purposes now, that's good enough. And there's some things we could probably do with this, just like it is. If we wanted to get rid of these borders, we could crop this. That's one way we could handle that. Let's do that. Let's see. Of course, I have to stop the animation before I do that, I think. Anyways, before I see that selection I just made. And we can just hit image and crop right there, and that would just go ahead and crop all the frames of the animation for us. There's one good thing about the image menu. Is just about anything you do in the image menu, it does it to an entire animation or just a single image. It depends on what you have loaded. So that's a good thing to know about. Okay, so let's go back here. And actually, I think I'll just put a little drawing here just to show how you could use this camera stabilization to make it easier to do things like compositing or drawing, rotoscoping, that sort of thing, because you can now go in and, you could go in and draw into this, and then you can restore the camera motion later. So let's see if I can draw like a rectangle or something here. Oops, not sure I've got this tool selected. So I've selected the rectangle tool. I should be able to just draw something. Let me go to deselect first of all. Okay, that's better. Say I wanted to draw a rectangle in here. Hold down the Alt key, and it'll draw that rectangle for every frame. Just a little trick you can use. It does that with the line tool, the rectangle tool, I believe. I'm not sure about the line tool, but some of the tools you can hold down the Alt key and it'll apply it to the entire animation. So as you can see there, we have that little rectangle draw. Now I'll show you a neat little feature here. Go back to animated and stabilize. And I said this would be useful for helping with rotoscoping and that sort of thing, because you take the motion out. That way, when you're doing rotoscoping or adding some kind of animated element or something, it's easier to do it when the camera's not moving around. Then you can go back later and put the camera motion back in, which is stored in memory. Once we've removed the motion, that motion is stored in memory. So we can go back here, hit restore motion, and it will restore the camera motion just like that. And now you can see that rectangle is tracking with our camera. So that's kind of a cool trick. That'd be good for doing those little square blobs that they put over people's faces. They don't want you to see their face or something like that. It'd be an easy way to add a thing that is being tracked to a motion point. So that's one little trick with the camera motion. There's some other issues here. Let me stop this. I'm going to restore this animation. There we go. And now we talk about border handling. As we said, we had that border. We didn't handle the borders on that. So one thing we could do is crop it. But another thing we can try to do is maintain the borders or reconstruct the borders so that we don't have to crop, and then we end up not having to. We don't have to shrink our image. So let me take a look how far we can get with that, because it's sort of computational, and it might do a good job with it, or it might not, but I'm going to give it a try. Let's see, go back to animated and stabilize. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to select track point, which was this little spot right here, and of course you can change that block size and all that stuff, by the way. That's not really a problem. But I was saying we're going to reconstruct, instead of repeating those borders, we're going to try to reconstruct them. That way we don't have to crop later. So I'll hit go. It'll go ahead and do its thing, and hopefully with any luck we'll not have to crop this later, and the borders will look a little bit better this time. So let's give that a moment to finish its work. And again, the screen may lock up or it might not. It depends on what your computer's doing and if you're trying to access other things or not. That just means it's busy. It doesn't mean it's I can already see the borders look a lot better. Doesn't mean it's crashed or anything. So hitting the play button, and you can see these borders, while not perfect, they are certainly a lot better. I mean, you could probably live with that. It just looks like a little video artifact or something. It's not. It's a little bit distracting. You still might want to crop a little bit off that, but it's a lot better. So that is the reconstruct option for the camera stabilization feature. So I guess that's about most of what I need to talk about. There are other things, but I think I'll leave it at that for now. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave some feedback. Thanks for watching, and talk to you later.